You're saying this map saves us 500 million?
Correct. The supply chain routing here has a massive error. Just because I clean doesn't mean I can't count.
The billionaire CEO who caught the cleaning lady saving 500 million. Impossible wedding. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments which city you are watching from. And at the end, do not forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. 6:47 in the morning. Sophie Martin was frozen in front of the bathroom mirror, holding her left hand as if it were evidence from a crime scene. The engagement ring was shining under the soft morning light. Diamond. Big. Real. Far too expensive to exist in the same universe as her. She blinked 3 times. The ring was still there. Okay, Sophie whispered to her reflection. This is real. Like, really real. This is not a dream. This is not a prank. I'm getting married to Liam Bennett. Pause. Liam Bennett. Longer pause. The billionaire CEO who sounds like a character from a soap opera. The mirror did not answer, obviously. But Sophie kept looking at it as if she expected her reflection to come to life and give her urgent motivational advice. You. She pointed to the mirror with her ring hand. You need to calm down. Take a deep breath. Count to 10. Do that mindfulness thing you watched on YouTube at 3 in the morning that never worked. She took a deep breath. Once, twice. On the 3rd try, she panicked again. I am getting married, she shouted at the mirror. Like, with a priest, bouquet, veil, all those things you see in magazines for rich people. And I do not know how to walk in high heels without looking like a giraffe with vertigo. She left the bathroom like an out-of-control storm, crossed the hallway of the apartment, which was now Liam's apartment, because she had moved in last week and still thought it was surreal, and went straight to the kitchen. She opened the fridge, closed it, opened it again, as if the contents would magically change. They did not. Milk, eggs, leftover Chinese food. Liam had ordered 2 nights ago, Greek yogurt with a questionable expiration date, and a bottle of expensive champagne someone had given as a gift, and Sophie was afraid to touch it because it was probably very costly. She grabbed the milk, went to the counter, looked at the silver toaster shining on the counter like some futuristic decoration piece. You, Sophie pointed. You are the official witness to all of this. I am getting married, and you will still be a toaster. But me? I will become, I do not know, a billionaire's wife. Like those women who appear in magazines wearing expensive clothes, with hair that defies gravity, and a face that looks like they have never eaten instant noodles in their lives. The toaster did not answer. Sophie put 2 slices of bread in it anyway. Pressed the button with dramatic force, as if she were activating a time bomb. There. Now we wait. I wait for the toast. You wait for me panicking. It is a partnership based on mutual fear and carbohydrates. And that was when the kitchen door opened. And Liam walked in, wearing a dark gray suit, navy blue tie perfectly adjusted, hair styled with that annoying perfection of someone who wakes up looking handsome, holding 2 cups of coffee and smiling in a way that should be illegal before 7 in the morning. Good morning, love of my life who talks to appliances. Sophie froze, turned slowly, her face red like a stoplight. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to hear you call the toaster your emotional partner. I did not call it an emotional partner. I said we have a waiting dynamic based on mutual respect and toast. Liam tried not to laugh as he handed her a cup of coffee. Of course, totally different. Sophie took the coffee, trying to gather whatever remained of her dignity. You should have warned me you were there. This is emotional privacy invasion, like wiretapping but worse. I live here. But the kitchen is neutral territory, like the Switzerland of the apartment. You cannot just walk in when someone is having an early morning existential crisis with appliances. Liam stepped closer, holding her face with both hands, his thumb gently brushing her cheek in a way that turned Sophie's brain into pudding. You are nervous. I am not. Yes, you are. You only talk to objects when you are nervous. Sophie looked away. Maybe I just like having one-sided conversations with things that do not judge me, do not interrupt me, and do not look at me with that "she is panicking again" expression. I never judge you. You just judged me for talking to the toaster. I thought it was sweet. Sophie let out an involuntary laugh, resting her forehead against his chest. I am terrified. Liam ran his hand gently through her hair. I know. Really terrified. The kind where I considered pretending to have temporary amnesia, changing my name and starting over selling handmade crafts on a deserted beach. You do not need to. We will do this together. Our way. Sophie stepped back a little, looking at him with bright eyes. Our way like what? A backyard wedding with hot dogs, a Spotify playlist, and decorations made of crepe paper? Liam smiled. If you want, I'll marry you in a gas station parking lot wearing a rented suit and eating a snack. Sophie felt her chest tighten in that warm, familiar way. You're unfairly perfect, like a movie character who shouldn't exist in real life. I know. It's my most charming flaw. She was about to answer when the toaster exploded with a violent popping sound. Both slices of bread shot into the air like wild missiles. One hit the floor with a sad little thud. The other landed on Liam's shoulder with surgical precision. Silence. Sophie looked at the bread on the floor, then at the bread on his shoulder, then at the toaster, which let out a thin line of smoke as if it had just committed a planned crime. The toaster sabotaged me. Liam picked the bread off his shoulder, trying very hard not to laugh. Maybe it just reacted to the pressure of the moment. Or maybe it knows I'm not fit for marriage and is trying to warn me by ejecting carbohydrates at high speed. Sophie? I don't know how to get married, Liam. She waved her arms dramatically, almost knocking over her coffee. I know how to clean. I know how to organize. I know how to measure the distance between forks with the kind of precision that would make an engineer proud. But I don't know how to be a bride. What do brides even do? They pick flowers. I don't know flower names. To me, they're all just the blue one or the yellow one. Liam placed his hands on her shoulders, firm but gentle. Breathe, Sophie inhaled, shaky. Better? No, all right. Then let's try another strategy. He leaned in, looking straight into her eyes with the kind of intensity that made Sophie forget her own name. Do you trust me? Obviously. Trust level, I'd give you my credit card PIN. Then trust that we're going to make this work. Even if the toaster rebels. Even if you panic. Even if I panic. We'll figure it out together. Sophie felt her eyes sting. Do you promise? I promise. She was about to answer when Liam's phone rang. Loud, insistent, like an alarm. He grabbed it, glanced at the screen, and his expression changed instantly. The smile disappeared. His posture stiffened. It's my mother. Sophie felt her stomach drop like an elevator in free fall. Eleanor calling. Now, at 7 in the morning on a Friday? She never calls early unless it's something urgent. Urgent good or urgent like I'm going to ruin your life and still say good morning. Liam answered, putting it on speaker because Sophie gave him that look that clearly meant, if you don't put it on speaker, I'll have an anxiety attack. Hi, Mom. Good morning. Eleanor Bennett's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade dipped in liquid nitrogen. Liam. Engagement dinner. Tonight, 6 o'clock, at my house. This is not negotiable. Silence. The kind of silence where the oxygen disappears from the room. Sophie stared at Liam with wide, terrified eyes. Liam looked at Sophie with an expression that said, I'm so sorry. The toaster let out one last puff of smoke, as if saying, I warned you. Mom, Liam began, trying to sound calm. Tonight? That's very last minute. We need time to prepare, to tell Sophie's family to buy proper clothes. It's already prepared. Eleanor cut in with the delicacy of a guillotine. I handled everything myself. Flowers, menu, guest list, dress code. You only need to arrive at 6 sharp. With her. Dressed appropriately. This is not a casual Sunday gathering, Liam. It is an official presentation to society. Sophie felt the world spin. Liam squeezed her hand, interlacing their fingers. We'll be there. Good. A calculated pause. And Liam, wear something worthy of the occasion. A tuxedo, not a work suit. And she, the tone turned cold, should choose something elegant. Nothing excessive. Nothing too bright. Discretion is essential. Sophie bit her lip so hard it turned white. Understood, Mom. Perfect. See you at 6. Another pause. Don't be late. Punctuality is respect. The call ended with a sharp beep. Sophie stared at the phone as if it had just released a nest of snakes. She scheduled an engagement dinner without telling us, gave a dress code, and still managed to call me flashy without saying the word. Liam rubbed his face, exhausted. Welcome to the Bennett family, where control is a mother's native language, surprises are strategic weapons, and kindness is a form of passive-aggressive attack. Sophie started pacing, hands tangled in her hair. Tonight, in like 11 hours. I need a dress, I need hair. I need posture. How does someone even walk with posture? I walk like a duck in a hurry. Liam held her by the shoulders, stopping her frantic pacing. Easy. Breathe. We'll fix everything. How? Liam, your mother just announced a formal dinner at her mansion with New York's elite while I'm here wearing cloud print pajamas and eating toaster-launched bread. You look lovely in pajamas. It's not about the pajamas. Sophie almost shouted. It's about... She stopped. Took a deep breath. I need to tell my family. My God, my family. She ran to the table, grabbed her phone with trembling hands, and dialed her mother's number. It rang once, twice. Hello, my beautiful girl. I've missed you so much. Mrs. Martin's voice burst through the phone like fireworks of motherly affection. Sophie could barely speak. Mom, I need to tell you something urgent. We already know, dear. Sophie blinked 3 times. What? About the dinner? We already know. Actually, we're already on our way. On your way where? Oh, honey, a very polite lady called yesterday, said she was Liam's mother, such an elegant voice. She sounded like those actresses who dub French movies. She invited all of us to the engagement dinner tonight. Sophie felt her blood turn cold. She turned slowly toward Liam, eyes wide with pure shock. Liam knew instantly. He whispered, tense. What happened? Sophie covered the phone's microphone, whispering back with a strangled voice. Your mother called my mother yesterday. What? She invited my whole family. Liam closed his eyes, processing. She's setting something up. Setting up what exactly? She wants your family to show up unprepared, without proper clothes, without knowing the protocol, so she can embarrass you in front of everyone. Sophie uncovered the microphone, trying to keep her voice steady. Mom? Where are you now? On the road, honey. We left home at 5 in the morning. Your father wanted to leave early to avoid traffic. We should get there around 4 in the afternoon. And who's coming? Everybody, of course. Your father, me, Grandma, your uncle, your cousins, Cousin Juka. Oh, and we brought Benedita. Sophie frowned, confused. Who is Benedita? A loud, shrill, impossible-to-ignore chicken clucking exploded in the background. Bok, bok, bok. Her mother continued, cheerful. The chicken, honey. She hasn't stopped singing since we put her in the box. I think she's excited about the trip. Your uncle said chickens bring good luck when life is about to change. Sophie looked up, begging the universe for strength. Mom, you brought a chicken to New York for a formal dinner at Liam's mother's mansion? Of course, honey. We couldn't leave her alone, and she's part of the family. Bop! Benedita confirmed loudly. Sophie slowly hung up the phone, placed it on the table carefully as if it were an armed bomb. Looked at Liam. My family is coming, I heard, with a chicken named Benedita. I heard that too, for a formal dinner at your house. Definitely heard, and your mother planned all of this. Liam let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. She wants to expose your family as unsuitable, to embarrass you, to make me reconsider. Sophie felt anger rising, but not toward her family, toward Eleanor. She underestimated us. Liam raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? She thinks my family will be something to be ashamed of. Sophie straightened her shoulders. But she doesn't know the Martins. We're chaotic, yes. Loud, yes. But we have love. And that matters more than any fancy dinner etiquette. Liam smiled, proud. I love you. I know, Sophie sighed, but I'm still terrified. And that's when it started. The itch. That visual itch Sophie knew too well. When panic rose, she needed to organize. She looked around the kitchen, and she saw it. The mugs hanging on the rack were crooked, not much, but enough to bother her. Sophie walked to the rack, started adjusting them, one by one, measuring the distance between each handle with her eyes. Sophie, Liam began gently, just a second. Honey, you don't have to. I have to. She turned the last mug until it aligned perfectly. See? Now it's right. Now I can breathe. Liam watched, understanding. She cleaned when she was nervous, and now she was straightening mugs. Sophie walked to the refrigerator, opened it, started reorganizing the shelves, milk lined up on the left, yogurts in a row, plastic containers stacked by size. Sophie, we need to get ready. Just 1 more minute. She moved the milk 3 centimeters to the right. There. Now it's symmetrical. Liam crossed his arms, smiling despite everything. You know organizing the fridge won't change the dinner, right? I know. Sophie shut the fridge hard. But it makes me feel like I control something in this mess. She walked into the living room, looked at the frames on the wall, pulled a tape measure from her bag, because of course she had one, started measuring the distance between the frames. 42 centimeters, then 45, then 38. This is visual anarchy, Sophie muttered, adjusting the second frame. Who hung this? A decorator with blurry vision? Liam stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. I hung them. Sophie froze. 3 years ago, I see. You just called my work visual anarchy? It was affectionate? Liam laughed, resting his chin on her shoulder. You're nervous, I understand, but we need to get ready. Sophie dropped the measuring tape and turned to him. How do we get ready for a guaranteed disaster? We don't get ready. Liam kissed her forehead. We survive it, together. Sophie leaned her head against his chest. And if everything goes wrong? Then we run away to the gas station and get married right there. Sophie let out a wet laugh. Are you serious? Completely. They stayed in each other's arms for a few seconds, until Sophie's phone rang again. Message from her mother. Sweetheart, I forgot to tell you. Your father is very excited. He said he has a surprise to share at dinner. It will be beautiful. Sophie showed the message to Liam. They looked at each other. Surprise? Sophie repeated, emotionless. My father has a surprise to share at dinner, in your mother's mansion, in front of New York's elite. It will be fine. Liam, you're lying, and I know when you lie because your left eyebrow shakes. He tried to control the eyebrow. Failed. Sophie pressed her forehead against the wall. I'm going to disappear from the map. Not from shame, from excess shame. Like, my certificate will say, cause of disappearance, advanced level social embarrassment. Liam pulled her back into his arms. No, you won't, because I'll be right next to you, the whole time, holding your hand, reminding you how amazing you are. And if anyone treats you badly... What? You'll fight your mother? If necessary. Sophie looked at him, surprised by the seriousness in his voice. You would do that? I gave up the company for you. Arguing with my mother is nothing. Sophie felt her eyes burn again. Stop being perfect. It's getting irritating. Liam smiled. Never. And while Liam held Sophie in the middle of the messy room, with perfectly aligned mugs and precisely measured frames, one truth was clear. The engagement dinner was going to be the most memorable chaos in the history of the Bennett family. Sophie Martin was at the center of everything. With a diamond ring on her hand, a chicken clucking in the road, a whole family arriving with a surprise, and no idea how to survive the next 11 hours. But at least she knew one thing. The mugs were perfectly symmetrical. And sometimes that had to be enough. 4:13 in the afternoon. Sophie was at Liam's apartment window, gripping the curtain so hard her fingers turned white when she saw what could only be described as a motorized, affectionate invasion. 3 old cars, a noisy van, and a pickup truck with a wooden crate in the back where something or someone was clucking non-stop. The Martins had arrived. Sophie dropped the curtain like she had touched fire. Liam, they're here. Liam appeared in the hallway, adjusting his tie for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Already? Sophie pointed at the window, panic rising. And there's a full fleet. How many cars does it take to transport one family? They came prepared for an invasion. Liam walked to the window and looked down. And yes, people were getting out of the cars like clowns coming out of a circus car. Hugs. Laughter. Someone pulling a suitcase from the trunk. And in the middle of everything, a wooden crate moving. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Benedita was alive and opinionated. Sophie pressed her forehead to the window glass. I'm going to freeze, right here, right now, from anticipatory embarrassment. No, you won't. Liam gently pulled her back. Come on, let's go downstairs. I can't. My legs turned into gelatin. Sophie, panic gelatin, Liam, like those desserts that shake when you touch them. Liam held her face with both hands, looking directly into her eyes. Breathe, they're just your parents. And my grandmother, and my uncle, and my cousins, and a chicken named Benedita. Details. Sophie let out a nervous laugh. You're underestimating Benedita's power to cause social chaos. They walked down to the ground floor, Sophie breathing deeply at each step as if she were heading toward the unthinkable. When they opened the building's front door, the first thing Sophie saw was her mother. Mrs. Martin, early 50s, hair in a slightly crooked bun, simple but clean clothes, and a smile so wide it lit up the entire block. My daughter, she shouted, running with open arms. Sophie barely had time to react before being swallowed into a hug that removed all air from her lungs. "Mom, I can't breathe." "Oh, I missed you, my girl. Look how beautiful you are. Are you eating well? Sleeping well? Is this young man treating you well?" "Mom, wait." But it was too late. Sophie's father appeared. Mr. Martin, tall, thin, serious face hiding sharp intelligence. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply walked up calmly and pulled Sophie into a firm hug. "Hi, sweetheart." Sophie felt her eyes sting. "Hi, Dad." He stepped back, holding her by the shoulders, studying her with that look of someone who sees beyond the obvious. "Are you okay?" Sophie nodded, not trusting her own voice. Her father looked at Liam. He held out his hand. "Mr. Martin, Sophie's father." Liam shook his hand, firm. "Liam Bennett, nice to meet you in person, sir." "The pleasure is mine." Sophie's father did not let go right away. He held it for 2 more seconds, as if he were measuring Liam's character through the handshake. "So you are the man who asked my daughter to marry you?" "I am, sir." "And you will treat her well?" "I will. I promise." Sophie's father finally released his hand, and something in his expression stressed. It was approval? "Good. Because if you do not, I will come back." Liam smiled. "Fair." That was when the grandmother appeared. Grandma Marta, 70-something, short, white hair tied with a floral scarf, and absolutely no filter. She looked Liam up and down like someone inspecting a horse at a fair. "So this is the rich young man." Sophie froze. "Grandma?" "Let me see." The grandmother walked around Liam like an inspector. Handsome, tall, good hair, white teeth. She poked his arm. "Strong, eats well." "Grandma, stop." The grandmother ignored her and turned to Sophie. "He is approved. You can marry him." Liam was red from trying not to laugh. Sophie wanted the ground to open and swallow her whole. But then came the uncle, Mr. Carlos, Sophie's father's younger brother. Big belly, loud voice, shirt unbuttoned too far, and the energy of someone who thought everyone wanted to hear his opinion. "Hey, is this the millionaire?" He slapped Liam on the back with enough force to almost knock him over. "Nice to meet you, Carlos Martin, but everyone calls me Carlo." "Nice to meet you, Carlo." Liam tried to regain his balance. "So tell me, what is the secret to getting rich? Stock market? Investments? Crypto? I am thinking about getting into that." Sophie jumped in quickly. "Uncle, can we talk about that later? Like, much later?" Carlo shrugged. Sure. No rush. But later I want some tips, okay?" And then came the cousins. Julia and Amanda, 20-something, floral dresses, heavy makeup, and phones in their hands recording everything. "Everyone, we are in New York," Julia shouted at her phone. "And look, this is Sophie's billionaire fiancé." Amanda stepped closer to Liam with the phone right in his face. "Hi, can you say hello to my followers?" Liam, completely lost, waved at the camera. "Hi, followers." "He is polite. Everyone. He is real." Amanda turned to the phone. "Follow for more exclusive wedding content." Sophie was having a small internal collapse, but then her mother noticed. "Girls, put away those phones," Mrs. Martin ordered. "We came here for dinner, not to film a television show." Julia and Amanda put their phones away, rolling their eyes, and then the grandmother looked around. At the fancy building, the doorman in a suit, the perfectly trimmed ornamental plants. She frowned. "This grass looks strange." Sophie blinked. "What do you mean strange, Grandma?" "It is full of nonsense." The grandmother pointed. "Look at it. Not one dry leaf, no anthills, nothing alive. It looks like fake grass." The building's doorman, who heard everything, tried not to laugh. Sophie whispered, "Grandma, this grass costs about $1,000 per square meter." $1,000? The grandmother looked horrified. "For grass? Good Lord, Sophie, these people are out of their minds." Liam was enjoying every second. But then Sophie noticed something. Everyone was way too excited. Her father smiling subtly, her mother with bright eyes, the uncle restless, the cousins whispering. They were hiding something. Sophie narrowed her eyes. "What is going on?" Her mother made an innocent face. "Nothing, dear. Why do you think something is happening?" "Because you are all acting weird, like suspiciously weird." Her father exchanged a look with her mother. The uncle started sweating. The grandmother looked like she knew something but would not say it. And then her mother announced, excited, "We have a surprise to reveal at dinner." Sophie felt her blood run cold. "Surprise? What kind of surprise?" "You will find out tonight." Her mother clapped her hands. "It will be beautiful." "Mom, that does not calm me down. That terrifies me." The uncle, unable to control himself, almost shouted, "It is the best news in the history of the Martin family." "Uncle, be quiet," her mother snapped. Carlin covered his mouth with both hands like a child who just spilled a secret. Sophie looked at her family, all of them smiling like they had just won the lottery. And she started imagining the worst possibilities. Her mother is pregnant again at 50. Her uncle invested all the family's savings in a pyramid scheme. Her grandmother will announce a wedding with a secret boyfriend. They bought a house here in New York without asking anyone. All options were equally terrifying. Sophie was about to ask again when she heard cluck, cluck, cluck. Benedita, in the wooden box, demanding attention. Grandma walked to the pickup truck, opened the box, and picked up the chicken in her arms as if it were a baby. "Come on, Benedita. Come see the big city." The chicken clucked, looking around with the suspicion of someone who had just arrived in enemy territory. The building's doorman looked at the chicken, then at Grandma, then at Sophie with an expression that said, "Is this serious?" Sophie made a face that said, "Yes, it is serious, and I also have no idea how we got here." And that was when Sophie heard a voice coming from above. "Hi, curious, young. Everyone, how cute. Is that a real chicken?" Sophie looked up, and she saw Victoria Bennett, leaning out of the third-floor window of the building, blonde hair loose, light pink clothes, phone in her hand, eyes shining with genuine curiosity. She waved, excited. "Hi, Sophie." Sophie waved back, awkward. "Hi." Victoria ran down the building stairs with a speed that defied physics. She appeared on the sidewalk, out of breath, and she went straight to the chicken. "Hi, sweetheart." She petted Benedita's head. "What is her name?" "Benedita," Grandma answered, proud. "Benedita, what a perfect name." Victoria took a selfie with the chicken. "My mother's going to panic when she sees this." Sophie felt her stomach drop. Your mother?" Victoria blinked as if she had forgotten something important. "Oh, yes, the dinner is at her house. You know that, right?" "I know. And Victoria lowered her voice, conspiratorial. "My mother is not very fond of animal surprises." Grandma frowned. "What do you mean not fond? Everyone likes chickens." Victoria looked at Sophie with an expression that said, "Help." Sophie looked at the sky, asking for strength. And then her father, who had been quiet until now, stepped closer. "Well, we should get ready for the dinner. What time do we need to be there?" 6 sharp, Liam answered. Her father looked at his watch. "Then we have an hour and a half. Enough time," her mother agreed. "We will get changed at the hotel and go straight from there." "Hotel?" Sophie asked. "Of course, dear. We booked 4 rooms at the hotel nearby." Sophie breathed in relief. At least they were not going to try squeezing into Liam's apartment. But then her uncle said, "And after dinner, we will tell the surprise." All the Martins glared at him. Her uncle covered his mouth again. And Sophie realized the next hours were going to be the longest of her life. Because now she had a formal dinner at Eleanor Bennett's mansion, a very excited family with a mysterious secret, a chicken named Benedita, and zero control over anything. While the Martin family headed to their cars to go to the hotel, Victoria walked up to Sophie. She whispered, "Your family is amazing." Sophie let out a humorless laugh. "You will change your mind after the dinner." Victoria shook her head. "I will not. They are real, like no masks, no pretending." She smiled. "My mother will hate it, and I will love watching that." And while the Martins drove away honking and waving, Sophie stood still on the sidewalk next to Liam. He held her hand. "It will all be fine." Sophie looked at him. "You keep lying, and your eyebrow keeps shaking." He tried to control his eyebrow. He failed again. Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered the question that had been echoing in her mind since her mother mentioned it. "What surprise do you think they have?" Liam did not answer, because he also had no idea. And that was even more frightening. 5:58 in the afternoon. Sophie was standing in front of the Bennett mansion, looking at the iron gate with golden details, and had one absolute certainty: she was going to throw up. Not metaphorically, literally. Liam held her hand firmly. "Breathe." "I am breathing," Sophie whispered in despair. "But my body is rejecting oxygen, like an allergy to air." "You do not have an allergy to air." "I do. Air from a $50 million mansion. My body was not designed to process this." Liam tried not to laugh. Behind them, the Martin family was getting out of 3 rental cars. because obviously they had not brought their old cars to a formal dinner. Her father adjusting his tie for the 10th time. Her mother checking if her lipstick was in place. Grandma complaining that the new shoes were squeezing her big toe. Her uncle fixing the suit jacket that had clearly been bought at the last minute. Her cousins taking selfies. And in the middle of everything, Victoria appeared. She had come with them from the hotel because she had spent the whole afternoon with the Martin family, making instant friends, especially with Grandma, who had already adopted her emotionally. Victoria walked up to Sophie, gently adjusting her necklace. "You look beautiful." Sophie looked down at her dark teal dress, which had cost a fortune in her opinion, and still thought she looked like she was pretending to be someone else. "I look like me pretending to be another person." "You look like you," Victoria corrected, "just in a fancy dinner version. And that's perfect." Grandma stepped closer, studying the mansion with the sharp eye of someone evaluating a house to buy. "So this is the mother-in-law's home?" "Yes, Grandma." Grandma made a face that showed she wasn't impressed. "It's too big. No one needs a house this size. It probably echoes when someone coughs." Victoria let out a laugh that was way too loud and tried to hide it with a cough. Sophie's father walked up and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" Sophie turned to him, and suddenly she felt 10 years old again, insecure and scared. "Dad, what if we don't fit in? What if they look at us and think we don't belong here?" Her father held her face gently between his hands. "Sophie Martin, look at me," she did. "We belong anywhere we set foot. Understand? It doesn't matter how much money these people have. We have dignity. We have love, and that's worth more than any mansion." Sophie felt her eyes burn. "But what if I embarrass myself?" "Then we'll be embarrassed together," he smiled. As a family, her mother walked over and took Sophie's hand. "And besides, sweetheart, we brought a surprise that's going to change everything. You'll see." Sophie was about to ask again about the surprise when the gate started opening, slowly, like a suspense movie. And there, at the entrance of the mansion, stood Eleanor Bennett. Impeccable beige dress, pearl necklace, perfect hair, the posture of a queen greeting her subjects, and next to her, Richard Bennett, dark gray suit, military posture, a face that revealed nothing. Eleanor descended the marble steps with practiced elegance. She stopped in front of the group and smiled, but not with her eyes. "Good evening. Welcome to our home." Sophie's mother reacted first, stepping forward with a big smile. "Good evening, Mrs. Bennett. What a beautiful home. Thank you for having us." Eleanor extended her hand, and Sophie's mother shook it with enthusiasm. Eleanor pulled back almost imperceptibly, as if the handshake had been too strong. "The pleasure is ours." A clear lie. "Please, come in." The Martin family began climbing the steps, and Sophie noticed something. Eleanor was analyzing each one of them. How they walked, their clothes, their posture, like a scientist observing an experiment. When it was Grandma's turn, she stopped in front of Eleanor and extended her hand. "Marta." Sophie's grandmother. Eleanor shook her hand with overly delicate grace. "A pleasure." Grandma did not let go right away. She held the handshake for 2 more seconds, looking straight into Eleanor's eyes. "My granddaughter is the best thing that ever happened to your family. I hope you know that." Heavy silence. Eleanor forced a smile. "Of course." Grandma released her hand and climbed the steps like someone who had just won the first battle. Behind them, Victoria whispered to Sophie, "Your grandmother is my hero." They entered the foyer, and Sophie had to make a conscious effort not to stop and stare. Crystal chandelier that probably had been crafted by angels. Marble floor so polished it reflected like a mirror. Double staircase that looked straight out of a Disney movie. Her uncle stopped, jaw dropped. "Wow. This is like a castle?" Eleanor pretended not to hear. "Please follow me to the dining room." They walked down a hallway Sophie was sure required a map to navigate, and finally reached the dining room. Huge table, 12 chairs, polished silverware, 3 different sizes of glasses for each person. A floral centerpiece that looked like it had been made by an artist. Sophie's mother whispered, "How many forks does one person need to eat?" Sophie whispered back, "A lot. Start from the outside and work your way in. And if I choose wrong, then we pretend it was intentional." They sat down. Eleanor at the head of the table, Richard beside her, Liam and Sophie on one side, the Martin family on the other. Victoria strategically placed between Sophie and Grandma, visible alliance, and the dinner began. The housekeeper, whom Sophie recognized as Carol from the first dinner, brought the starter, soup, served in a white porcelain bowl with a gold rim. Her uncle looked at the soup suspiciously. "Is this all?" Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "It's the first course, Mr. Martin." "Oh, first course. Like an appetizer?" "Exactly." Her uncle picked up a spoon, the wrong one, but no one corrected him, and took a sip. His face lit up. It's good. A bit watery, but good." Eleanor pressed her napkin with invisible tension. Sophie wanted to disappear. Grandma, sensing the tension, decided to break the ice. "So, Eleanor, may I call you Eleanor?" "Mrs. Bennett would be more appropriate." All right. Then, Mrs. Bennett, have you always lived in a house this size?" Eleanor took a sip of wine before answering. "My family has owned properties for generations." "Generations," Grandma repeated. "How fancy." "We had a farm for 3 generations, but it was small, about the size of your living room." Richard coughed, hiding what might have been a laugh. Eleanor didn't find it amusing. How charming. Victoria was holding back her laughter so hard she turned red. The maid brought the main course. Lamb, with vegetables arranged like artwork, and a sauce that probably had a French name. The uncle looked at the plate like he was trying to decode a hieroglyph. "Is this meat?" "Lamb with red wine sauce and truffled mushroom reduction," Eleanor explained. "Truffled," the uncle repeated. "Like chocolate truffles?" "No," Eleanor replied, icy. "A truffle is a rare fungus that grows underground." "Fungus," the uncle blinked. "So we're eating fungus?" "Expensive fungus," Grandma added helpfully. Sophie closed her eyes, silently asking for strength. Liam, noticing her despair, held her hand under the table, gave it a gentle squeeze, as if saying, "I'm here." Sophie squeezed back, almost crying with gratitude. And that's when the uncle tried to grab his water glass, but he misjudged the distance and knocked it over. The glass tipped in slow motion. Water spread across the table like a tiny wave, soaked the tablecloth, soaked the napkin, almost soaked Eleanor's plate. The uncle froze, horrified. "Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm a disaster." Carol appeared with superhuman speed, cleaning everything with military precision. Eleanor said nothing, but her eyes said plenty. Sophie wanted a magician's hat to disappear into. Her mother tried to save the moment. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Bennett. My brother-in-law is enthusiastic." "I can see that," Eleanor replied, sharp as a blade. Victoria, noticing things were collapsing fast, tried to change the subject. "So, Mr. and Mrs. Martin, Sophie told me you recently discovered a surprise?" The entire Martin family lit up instantly. The father smiled quietly. The mother clapped her hands. The uncle almost jumped out of his chair. The cousins started whispering. Sophie's mother said, excited, "Oh yes, we were going to reveal it after dessert, but..." The father interrupted, gentle but firm. "Let's wait for the right moment, dear." Eleanor, curious in spite of herself, asked, "A surprise?" "Yes," Grandma said with a mischievous smile. "A surprise that's going to change a lot of things." Eleanor didn't like the tone, but before she could respond, the uncle, too excited, practically shouted, "More bread, please." Like he was at a bakery, in the middle of a formal dinner. Everyone at the table turned to him. Eleanor went pale with fury. The uncle realized what he'd done and turned bright red. "I'm sorry, I meant, may I have more bread, please?" Carol brought the bread basket in an awkward silence. Sophie, unable to take any more, stood up. "Excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom," Eleanor pointed without looking. End of the hall, first door on the right. Sophie walked fast, almost running. She entered the marble bathroom because even the bathroom was marble, closed the door, and broke down. She leaned on the sink, gripping it tightly, breathing deeply. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "You've survived worse. You saved $500 million. You can survive a dinner." She splashed cold water on her face, dried it, looked at her reflection again, and made a decision. She was not going to let Eleanor win. She was not going to be ashamed of her family, and she was not going to run. Sophie straightened her shoulders, fixed her dress, and left the bathroom. Head high, confident posture, determination renewed. When she walked back to the table, Victoria saw it, and smiled. She whispered softly as Sophie passed, "That's how you do it." Sophie sat down, picked up the fork, the correct one this time, and continued eating as if nothing had happened. Liam looked at her, surprised and proud. Eleanor noticed the change, and didn't like it one bit. Dinner continued in tense silence until dessert was served, and Sophie's father stood up holding his wine glass. "Before dessert, I'd like to make a toast." Everyone raised their glasses. The father looked at Sophie with pride, then at Liam, then at Eleanor, and said something no one expected. "To the Martin family, who discovered yesterday that there are oil wells on our farmland." Total silence. The kind of silence where time freezes and the universe stops spinning. Eleanor went pale. Richard dropped his glass. Sophie's eyes widened as her jaw fell open. Eleanor's hand shook, and every single Martin smiled. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then New York's elite exploded into whispers that sounded like a swarm of furious bees, and Sophie Martin, in the middle of it all, felt her hands start to tremble. She looked at the table. The silverware was all crooked from the water her uncle had spilled. Eleanor's napkin was askew. Richard's wine glass was 3 centimeters further left than it should be. Sophie felt the itch start, that visual itch that ran up her spine and screamed, "Fix this now!" But she couldn't. Not here, not now. So she just stayed still, her hands trembling in her lap, her eyes locked on the crooked silverware as she tried to breathe. Liam noticed. He always noticed. He held her hand under the table, fingers tightening around hers. Sophie squeezed back so hard she probably hurt him, but Liam didn't complain. He only held tighter. Eleanor, on the other side of the table, had regained partial composure. She set her glass down with calculated care, wiped her mouth with the napkin, and looked directly at Sophie's father. "Oil." She repeated the word as if she were testing poison on her tongue. "How convenient." Sophie's father didn't lose his calm smile. "Not convenient. Surprising. We didn't expect it." "I'm sure." Eleanor forced a cold smile. Richard Bennett, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. "Mr. Martin, do you understand the legal implications of oil exploration? The taxes? The environmental regulations?" Sophie's father turned to him, still calm. "Yes, I do. We hired specialized attorneys. Everything is within the law." Richard blinked, surprised. Her grandmother, noticing the tension, decided to step in. "Look, we may not have been born rich, but we're not foolish." Eleanor clenched her teeth so hard Sophie heard the grind. The uncle, who had stayed quiet for a record amount of time, couldn't hold back anymore. He stood up with so much enthusiasm he nearly knocked over his chair. "People, you don't understand. This is huge." Then he saw the linen tablecloth. White, flawless, probably imported. He pulled it. The tablecloth came off like a poorly executed magic trick. Plates rattled, glasses wobbled, the flower arrangement toppled. Eleanor made a sound that could only be described as internal pain. Carol rushed in, trying to save whatever she could. But the uncle already had the tablecloth in his hands, grabbing a pen from his pocket. He began writing on the tablecloth. "Look at this. If we have 1,000 barrels a day times $80, that's..." He scribbled numbers feverishly. 80,000 a day. Sophie saw the silverware shift with the tablecloth, becoming even more crooked, turning into complete visual anarchy. Her hands trembled harder. She automatically began aligning her own plate, pushed it 2 centimeters to the left, adjusted her napkin, centered her glass, trying to create any order in the middle of the chaos. Victoria, sitting beside her, noticed and quietly began aligning her own things too. Sophie looked at her, surprised. Victoria gave her a small, knowing smile, and Sophie felt a wave of gratitude so strong she almost cried. Meanwhile, the uncle continued, "And that's just per day. We are going to be filthy rich." Her grandmother, seeing the opportunity, lifted her own glass. "Can someone fill my glass? Because this deserves a bigger one, like a New Year's Eve glass." Carol, nervous, grabbed the wrong bottle, the one worth $1,000, Richard's special reserve, and she filled the grandmother's glass to the brim. Richard saw it and turned pale, but said nothing. The grandmother raised her glass, stood up, and made the most chaotic toast in Bennett family history. "To the Martin family, who spent 30 years sweating on the farm, and now we have oil, and we deserve it." The entire Martin family stood up, cheering loud, shouting, hugging each other, the cousins taking pictures, the uncle still scribbling on the tablecloth, the mother crying with emotion, and the grandmother taking a huge sip of the $1,000 wine as if it were juice. New York's elite was in absolute shock. Disapproving looks, outraged whispers. Eleanor was frozen, completely speechless. And Sophie noticed. But instead of relief, she felt panic. Because now everyone would think she had planned all of this, that she had executed the perfect scheme. Met the billionaire CEO, got engaged, and miraculously her family discovered oil. She looked around. The elite's expressions weren't just shock, they were judgment, suspicion. Sophie felt her chest tighten, her hands tremble even more. She wanted to grab the measuring tape from her bag, measure something, anything, just to feel some control, but she couldn't. Victoria leaned toward her, whispering, "I knew your family had personality. They're wonderful." Sophie turned to her, eyes shining. "But everyone will think I set this up. Anyone who thinks that is foolish." Victoria placed a hand over hers, "And foolish people don't deserve your attention." Liam, on the other side, squeezed her other hand. "She's right." Sophie took a deep breath, trying to believe it. But then the grandmother, far too excited with the expensive wine, dropped the final bomb. "And you know what else?" She raised her glass high. "We want to live close to our Sophie, stay together, be neighbors." Eleanor, who had been trying to recover, froze again, with the glass trembling in her hand, and one single thought crossed her mind. This cannot be happening. But it was, and it was going to get much worse. Eleanor Bennett stayed so still, she looked like a wax figure. The wine glass trembled in her hand. Her eyes were fixed on the grandmother, her mouth slightly open, as if she had just heard a prophecy about the end of the world. And the grandmother, completely unaware of the chaos she had caused, took another sip of the $1,000 wine and smiled. Sophie's mother, delighted with the idea, clapped her hands. "Oh, it would be beautiful. We could visit every day, Sunday lunch, the children playing together." The uncle added, helpful, "And we could have weekend cookouts, like those big family ones, you know?" The cousins were already on their phones looking up houses. "Everyone, look at this. There is a house 3 blocks away. 4 million. 4 million, the uncle almost choked. "For a house?" "Welcome to Manhattan," Victoria murmured, trying not to laugh. Sophie was frozen in her chair, her hands gripping the napkin so hard her fingers turned white. She looked at the silverware in front of her, still crooked, still misaligned, still begging to be straightened. But she could not move. She could only sit there, watching her family plan an invasion of the most exclusive neighborhood in New York, as if they were planning a picnic. Eleanor finally reacted. She set her glass on the table with surgical care, wiped her mouth with the napkin, and composed herself with impressive speed. Her posture returned. Her expression hardened. Her voice came out sharp as a blade. "How lovely that you are all so enthusiastic." A calculated pause. "But I am afraid there are no properties for sale in this neighborhood." Sophie's mother, innocent, asked, "None? Not even a small house?" "None," Eleanor repeated, cold. "This neighborhood is permanent. The families here have lived for generations. Everything is carefully preserved. There is no turnover." The uncle frowned. "But there's always someone wanting to sell, right? Like divorce, bankruptcy, those things." Richard coughed, clearly uncomfortable with the brutal honesty. Eleanor smiled, but not with her eyes. "Not in this neighborhood, Mr. Martin. Here, people do not fail." The grandmother, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward with a sharp look. "Everyone fails, dear. Some just hide it better." A heavy tension fell over the table. Victoria bit her lip to keep from laughing. Sophie wanted the ground to swallow her whole. And then Sophie's father, who had been silent, watching everything, took his phone from his pocket, slowly, deliberately. Eleanor noticed the movement and frowned. "Mr. Martin?" He did not answer. He simply unlocked the phone, scrolled through his contacts, and tapped a number. He put it on speaker. The entire table went silent. The phone rang once, twice. Then a professional male voice answered. "Good evening, Mr. Martin. I hope I am not interrupting dinner." "Do not worry, David," Sophie's father replied, calm. "I just need to confirm some information." "Of course, sir. What do you need?" Was the transaction for the Upper East Side property finalized? Sophie felt her stomach drop. No. He did not do this. He did not do this. "Yes, sir. Electronic signature confirmed 20 minutes ago. Deed transferred. The property is officially yours." Eleanor went pale. Full payment processed as requested. The former owners were very pleased with the offer. Sophie's father continued with the same surgical calm. "And the exact address?" 1847 Park Avenue, next to the Bennett residence, as you specified." Silence. The kind of silence where even the air stops moving. "And the final amount?" $120 million, sir. Exactly twice the market value, as in your initial offer. The owners accepted in less than an hour. Perfect. Thank you, David. Good work. Always at your service, Mr. Martin. Enjoy your dinner. The call ended. Sophie's father placed the phone in his pocket, picked up his wine glass, and looked directly at Eleanor. So, Mrs. Bennett, it seems there was a property for sale in this neighborhood after all. He paused. Or rather, there was. Now it is ours, and it is exactly next door to yours. Eleanor dropped her napkin. It drifted to the floor like a dry leaf. Richard froze with his glass in midair. The entire elite exploded into whispers so loud they sounded like a jet engine. And the Martin family? The Martin family exploded into celebration. Yes! The uncle jumped from his chair. We are going to be neighbors. The mother began to cry with emotion. My goodness. We will live near Sophie. I will be able to see my daughter every day. The cousins were already taking celebratory selfies, and the grandmother? The grandmother raised her glass, still full of the expensive wine, and shouted, Now it will be easy to borrow sugar and flour and eggs and anything. Eleanor made a sound that could only be described as an internal cry of agony. Sophie, desperate, began lining up the silverware in front of her. The fork, the knife, the dessert spoon. She pushed everything 2 millimeters to the left, adjusted the angle, centered it. Her hands were visibly shaking, trying to create order in the middle of complete chaos. Victoria, sitting beside her, noticed and quietly began aligning her own silverware too. A silent message, I'm here with you. Liam, on the other side, held Sophie's hand under the table. He squeezed firmly. She squeezed back, almost in tears. Her cousins, completely unaware of the social disaster unfolding, were already planning. We can have pool parties and weekend barbecues. Christmas together. Sophie's mother, emotional, looked at Eleanor and said with genuine sincerity, Mrs. Bennett, you are so kind. I'm sure we're going to be great neighbors. We can exchange recipes, have breakfast together. Eleanor was experiencing something close to a silent, nervous breakdown. Her left eye twitched. Her hand gripped the edge of the table. Her breath was short. Richard tried to intervene. Eleanor, dear. But she didn't hear him. She stood up, slowly. The chair scraped against the marble floor with a sharp sound that made everyone stop talking. All eyes turned to her. Eleanor looked at the Martin family, Bennett Sophie, Bennett Liam. And then, without saying one word, she turned and walked out of the dining room. Stiff steps, tense posture, straight back. But everyone saw it. Eleanor Bennett's first public defeat. Richard stood as well, clearly torn between following his wife or staying with the guests. He chose to follow. Excuse me, he murmured, leaving after her. The room fell into heavy silence, until Victoria exploded. She grabbed Sophie's arms and practically jumped in her chair. Yes, 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 she almost shouted. You are officially on my side now, sweetheart. This is a victory. Sophie stared at her, stunned. Victoria, your mother just left her own table. I know. Victoria was radiant, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She never loses control. Never. And your father just made her lose it in front of everyone. Grandma, hearing the conversation, yelled from the other end of the table, I like that girl. She pointed at Victoria. You can join our family too. Victoria laughed so loudly it echoed through the entire room. The cousins asked for her phone number, and Sophie's mother was already inviting her for Sunday lunch. In the middle of all that, Sophie looked at Liam. He was smiling, proud. Not of her father. Your father is a genius, Liam whispered. Sophie looked at her father, who was calmly finishing dessert, as if he hadn't just caused a social earthquake. He noticed her looking and winked. A silent, I've got you, sweetheart. And for the first time all evening, Sophie felt something other than panic. She felt pride. Because her family was chaotic, yes. Loud, yes. With no filter, absolutely. But they were hers, and they had just bought a $120 million mansion just to be close to her. Victoria took her phone from her bag and updated the contact to Sophie, my hero. And while the Martin family celebrated, the elite whispered in shock, and Eleanor Bennett was probably destroying something expensive in another room. Sophie realized something important. She had survived. Not perfectly, not elegantly, but with her family, with Liam, with Victoria, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. But then Grandma shouted, And we're bringing Benedita to the new house. She's going to love the garden. Sophie covered her face with her hands. It had gotten worse. And it was going to get much worse. 7:43 in the morning. Eleanor Bennett woke to the sound of a jackhammer tearing through the sacred silence of the Upper East Side, and she knew, instantly, that her life had been turned upside down. She sat up at once, her hair, for the first time in decades, completely messy. Richard was still asleep beside her, snoring softly, unaware of the sonic apocalypse happening outside. Eleanor went to the window, pulled the silk curtain open with force, and looked down, and saw it, a construction truck. 2 workers in orange vests, tools everywhere, and the immaculate French fence separating the 2 properties being demolished, piece by piece, as if it were trash. Eleanor felt something rising in her throat, not anger, fury, pure, uncontrollable, visceral. She went down the stairs so fast her silk robe flowed behind her like a villain's cape. Walked through the kitchen, ignored Carol trying to offer coffee, opened the back door with so much force it hit the wall, and stepped into the yard, barefoot, in her robe, hair loose. For the first time in years, Eleanor Bennett was in public without being perfectly put together. And she didn't even notice, because all she saw was the fence being destroyed. "What are you doing?" she practically shouted. The 2 construction workers stopped, startled. The older one, a man around 50 with a graying beard, took off his helmet. "Good morning, ma'am. We're removing the fence as requested." "Requested?" Eleanor stepped forward. "I didn't request anything." "No, ma'am." The worker pointed to the house next door. "Mr. Martin requested it. We're building an access gate between the 2 properties." Eleanor went pale. "A gate?" "Yes, ma'am, with a new wrought iron fence. It's going to look nice. The project's approved by the city. Everything's in order." Eleanor opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then she heard a familiar, cheerful voice coming from the other side of the property. "Good morning, neighbor." Eleanor turned slowly and saw her. Sophie's grandmother, sitting in a beach folding chair, wearing a pink visor, sunglasses, holding a giant thermal cup of coffee, as if she were watching a live show. Grandma waved, completely friendly. "Sorry for the early noise, but we thought it was better to start right away. Family needs direct access, right?" Eleanor struggled to form words. "Direct access?" "Yes." Grandma took a sip of her coffee. "This way I can come get sugar without walking around the whole block." Much more practical. Eleanor felt her left eye twitch. The worker, noticing the tension, tried to be helpful. "Would you like to see the project, ma'am? There'll be a double gate, electronic lock, intercom." "I do not want to see the project," Eleanor snapped, her voice louder than intended. "I want you to stop now." Grandma leaned forward in her chair. "Dear, we can't stop. We already paid in advance. I did not authorize this." "No need," Grandma smiled. "The fence is on our side of the property. We can do whatever we want." Eleanor looked at the worker, desperate. "Is that true?" The worker checked the blueprint, embarrassed. "Technically, yes, ma'am. The property line is 3 meters inward. The old fence was on their land, so they have the right to modify it." Eleanor felt the ground vanish beneath her. That's when the uncle appeared, wearing a yellow helmet, an orange safety vest clearly bought for the occasion, and the enthusiasm of a child at an amusement park. "Good morning, everyone." He waved at Eleanor as if they were old friends. "I came to help with the construction." He approached one of the workers, grabbed a sledgehammer, and said, "Let me give you a hand." The worker tried to stop him. "Sir, you don't have to." But the uncle had already lifted the sledgehammer and hit the fence. Hard. The piece of French carved wood flew, shot across the garden like a runaway missile, and hit Eleanor's award-winning rose arrangement. The roses exploded into red petals that scattered like tragic confetti. Absolute silence. The uncle froze, sledgehammer still in the air, realizing what he'd done. Oops. Eleanor was trembling, fists clenched, short breath, red face, and then she heard, "Mom?" Sophie, running through Eleanor's garden in pajamas, sweatpants, and an old t-shirt, messy hair, pure panic on her face. "Mom, stop!" Sophie reached her out of breath. "Stop demolishing. We can't do this without warning." Grandma looked confused. "But we did warn them, dear. Your father called the city yesterday." "I'm not talking about the city. I'm talking about Mrs. Bennett." Sophie pointed at Eleanor, who was clearly seconds from a breakdown. Grandma looked at Eleanor, then at Sophie, then at Eleanor again. "Oh," she took another sip of coffee. "But we don't need her authorization, do we? The fence is on our side." Sophie covered her face with her hands. This isn't about authorization, Grandma. It's about respect. We respect her. Grandma smiled. That's why we're making a beautiful gate with flowers on both sides. It'll be lovely. Sophie looked at the pieces of fence scattered across the ground. Crooked, uneven, chaotic. The itch started. That visual itch that made her brain scream. She went to the pieces, crouched, and started stacking them, one on top of the other. Perfectly aligned, organized, her hands shaking. Sophie, what are you doing? Grandma asked. I'm organizing, Sophie said, almost crying. Because someone has to organize something in this mess. That's when Victoria appeared, wearing pink silk pajamas, fuzzy slippers, hair in a messy bun, holding a cup of coffee. She looked at the scene, her mother shaking with rage, Sophie stacking wood like her life depended on it, Grandma in a folding chair, the uncle with a sledgehammer, the workers unsure what to do. And she started laughing. Loud, uncontrolled. This is the best thing I've seen all morning. She walked toward Sophie. Want some coffee? I brought extra. Sophie stared at her as if Victoria had lost her mind. How can you be laughing? This is a disaster, I know! Victoria sat on the ground next to Sophie, helping stack the pieces of wood. But it is an epic disaster. My mother is having a breakdown in a silk robe. This is historic. Eleanor, hearing that, turned toward Victoria with a look that could kill. Victoria Elizabeth Bennett, you come back inside right now. Victoria took a sip of her coffee, calm. No, thank you. I am having a great time here. Victoria. Mother, relax. Victoria signaled to the construction workers. Do you want coffee? I brought a thermos. The workers, seeing the chance for a break, nodded yes. Victoria served coffee to everyone as if it were a garden party. Eleanor was officially having a short circuit, and then Liam appeared. Wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair messy, eyes still sleepy, he took in the scene in 2 seconds. What happened? Sophie, still stacking wood, answered without looking up. My family is building a gate. My uncle destroyed the roses, your mother is having an episode, and I am organizing trash because IT is the only thing I can control. Liam knelt beside her, gently holding her shoulders. Breathe. I cannot breathe. Sophie turned to him, eyes full of tears. Liam, look at this. Look at the chaos. My family is destroying everything, and I cannot stop it. And your mother hates me. And you are going to regret asking me to marry you. Liam held her face with both hands. I will never regret you. But your mother. My mother will get over it. He wiped her tears with his thumb. And if she does not, that is her problem. Sophie sobbed, resting her forehead against his. I am destroying your life. You are saving my life. The grandmother, hearing their conversation, shouted, Hey, you two. Stop being emotional and come drink coffee. Victoria laughed so hard she almost spilled her cup. Eleanor, realizing she had completely lost control of the situation, turned and walked back inside the house. With stiff steps, straight posture, but dignity visibly shaken, Richard appeared in the back doorway, finally awakened by the chaos. Eleanor. What? She walked past him without a word and shut the door. The grandmother, completely unaware of the drama, stood up from her chair and announced, Good. Now that this is solved, let's talk about the next improvement. Sophie froze. Next improvement? Yes. The grandmother clapped her hands. We are going to build a decorative chicken coop in the garden for Benedita, with a painted wooden house and everything. It will look adorable. Sophie looked at Liam. Liam looked at Sophie. Victoria burst into laughter so loud the birds flew away in fear, and Sophie realized she had just stepped into a war. A war between 2 matriarchs, 2 families, 2 worlds, and she was right in the middle. With a measuring tape in her bag, OCD activated, and zero control over anything. 3 days later, Eleanor Bennett was in the garden watering her rare orchids imported from Thailand when she saw something that made her freeze. Sophie's grandmother walking through the gate, still without a door installed, only the metal frame, with a pink plastic container in her hands, waving, smiling. As if that were normal. Eleanor slowly set the watering can on the ground, trying to process what she was seeing. The grandmother approached with cheerful steps, the container swinging. Good morning, neighbor, she shouted, delighted. I saw you baking cake through the window yesterday. It smelled so good that I could not resist. I brought a container so you can give me a piece. Eleanor blinked 3 times. You walked through my garden to ask for cake? Yes. The grandmother extended the container as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It does not need to be much, just a little piece, so I can taste it. Eleanor looked at the container, then at the grandmother, then at the gate with no door. Mrs. Marta, this gate is not finished yet. You should not. Oh, but they said it is fine to pass through, the grandmother interrupted. The workers said the structure is solid, and you know, we are family now, right? Family does not need formality. Eleanor felt her left eye twitch. We are not. She took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. The cake is not for visitors. It is for a charity tea happening tomorrow. The grandmother made a genuinely disappointed face. Oh, I see. Pause. But you know, did you have leftover batter? Because I saw you scraping the bowl and throwing some away. It looked like there was still quite a bit. Eleanor was speechless. You were watching me? Through the window? Not watching, the grandmother corrected, as if there were a difference. Just looking casually while I watered my plants. Your kitchen window faces my garden. It is hard not to see. Eleanor closed her eyes, counting to 10. When she opened them, the grandmother was still there, holding the container, waiting. I will. Get a piece, Eleanor said, defeated. How kind, the grandmother clapped. Eleanor walked into the house, took a microscopic piece of cake, put it in the container, and returned. The grandmother looked at the tiny piece. Wow, this cake must be very expensive, right, for you to give such a small slice? Eleanor did not answer. She just handed the container back and went inside. Without saying goodbye, without smiling, just surviving. Second invasion. Later that same day, Eleanor was reading in the office when the doorbell rang. Carol went to answer it, and returned with a confused expression. Mrs. Bennett, Sophie's mother, is at the door asking for sugar. Eleanor lifted her eyes from the book slowly. Sugar? Yes, ma'am. You went to the store yesterday and bought enough supplies to feed a small army. I know, ma'am, but she said she needs it to make brigadeiro and forgot to buy some. Eleanor closed the book with a sharp snap. She walked to the door, and there was Mrs. Martin, smiling, holding an empty cup. Hi, Mrs. Bennett. Sorry to bother you. I need a cup of sugar. I am making brigadeiro for the moving crew, and I ran out. Eleanor looked at the cup, then at Mrs. Martin. What kind of sugar? Mrs. Martin blinked, confused. Regular sugar. I only have organic Demerara sugar, imported. Eleanor said, icy. Oh. Mrs. Martin hesitated. Will that work? Eleanor walked to the pantry with rigid steps, took the sugar container, which cost $50, filled the cup, and returned. She handed it over with the expression of someone donating a vital organ. Mrs. Martin took it, delighted. Thank you, neighbor. I will return it tomorrow. Or better, I will make some brigadeiro and bring some for you to try. And she left before Eleanor could refuse. Eleanor closed the door, leaned against it, and whispered to the universe, this cannot be happening. Third invasion. Next morning, Liam was in the garage working on the car when he heard, Hey, brother-in-law. He turned and saw Sophie's uncle standing in the garage entrance. No warning, no ringing the doorbell, just appeared. She? Carlo? Liam put down the screwdriver, confused. How did you get in? Through the gate. The uncle pointed to the back of the yard. It is still open, very practical. Liam tried to process that. You crossed the yard to come here? Yes, I need a wrench. Mine broke while I was setting up the grill. Do you have one? Liam blinked. Grill? Yes. We bought a huge one, like professional. We are having a big cookout this weekend. Still processing the casual invasion, Liam took the wrench from the toolbox. Here. Thanks, brother-in-law. The uncle slapped Liam on the back so hard he almost fell. You are good people. Come by on Saturday. We will have picana. And he left the same way he came. Crossing the yard, waving, Liam stood there, holding his sore shoulder, thinking, is this going to happen every day now? That afternoon, Eleanor made a decision. She called a security company, and the next morning, when the Martin family woke up, they saw something new on the gate. 3 industrial padlocks. One at the top, one in the middle, one at the bottom, each with a different key. The grandmother was having coffee on the porch when she saw them. She stood up, walked to the gate, and stared at the padlocks like someone studying modern art. She touched the middle padlock. Interesting. Sophie, who had come to visit the family, appeared behind her. Grandma, what? She saw the padlocks and felt her stomach drop. Oh no. Oh yes. The grandmother crossed her arms. 3 padlocks. This is a family offense, Sophie. Grandma, she is just trying to have privacy. Privacy? The grandmother turned, outraged. We are neighbors. Neighbors do not need 3 padlocks. This is a declaration of war. Sophie covered her face with her hands. Please do not turn this into a war. But it was too late. The grandmother had that look, that determined look of someone who would not let it go. That afternoon, Victoria showed up at the door of the Martins' mansion, backpack on her shoulders, tired expression. Sophie's mother answered. Victoria, what a surprise! Hi, Mrs. Martin. Victoria sighed. Can I stay here for a while? My mother is acting like a condominium dictator, and I need a mentally healthy environment. Mrs. Martin opened the door wide, pulling Victoria inside. Of course you can, dear. Come in. Have lunch with us. Victoria walked in and was welcomed like a long-lost daughter. The grandmother offered brigadeiro. The uncle showed her the new grill. The cousins asked to film TikTok together, and Victoria, for the first time in days, relaxed. I love this family, she whispered to Sophie. Sophie was sitting on the floor of the empty living room, still without furniture, measuring the distance between moving boxes with the tape measure. 12 centimeters, then 15, then 9. This is wrong, she murmured, adjusting the 3rd box. Everything needs to have equal spacing. Victoria sat beside her. Are you okay? No. Sophie did not take her eyes off the boxes. Nothing is in the right place. Nothing. And I cannot make anything right. Victoria picked up another box and helped her straighten it. Then we straighten everything together. Sophie looked at her, eyes shining. Thank you, always. The next day, there was the neighborhood's monthly condo meeting. Eleanor went, of course, with an organized folder and a list of complaints about privacy invasions. And then Sophie's uncle showed up, with a portable grill, charcoal, a cooler full of beer. He walked into the condo clubhouse meeting room, looked around and yelled, "Where's the meat? A condo meeting does not have a barbecue?" Total silence. 20 pairs of elite eyes turned to him. Eleanor closed her eyes, counting to 10 in 3 different languages. The condo president, a 70-year-old man, cleared his throat. Miss Martin, this is an administrative meeting. It is not a social event. The uncle looked at the cooler full of beer, then at the grill, then back at the president. So, I brought all this for nothing? Yes. Oh, the uncle scratched his head. Sorry, I thought it was like a gathering. He left, embarrassed, dragging the grill behind him. Eleanor did not say a word, but the look she sent toward the door said everything. That night, Liam found Sophie in the new house, sitting on the floor, surrounded by perfectly aligned boxes, crying softly. He sat beside her, pulling her into a hug. What happened? I do not belong to either world, Sophie sobbed. My family is too chaotic for your mother's world, and I am too formal for my family's world. I do not fit anywhere. Liam held her face. You fit with me, and that's all that matters. Sophie leaned her forehead against his. And what if your mother never accepts me? Then she loses. Liam kissed her forehead. But you do not. And while they stayed there, holding each other in the middle of the aligned boxes, Sophie's phone rang. A message from Eleanor. Formal meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. to discuss coexistence rules between the properties. Mandatory presence. Sophie showed the message to Liam. He sighed. This is going to be a war. Sophie rested her head on his shoulder. I know. And now the war had a date and time. 9:45 in the morning. Sophie was standing in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting her dress for the 10th time, her hands shaking so much she could not close the zipper on the back. Liam came up behind her and gently closed the zipper. But when she turned around, he saw the panic in her eyes and knew. The meeting was going to be a disaster. At 10 o'clock sharp, the condo clubhouse meeting room was full. Eleanor at the head of the table in a perfect beige suit, hair in a flawless bun, posture of a general about to declare war. In front of her, a stack of printed documents, organized, with colored clips. Across the table, the Martin family. Sophie's father in a suit jacket, but clearly uncomfortable. Her mother wearing the most elegant dress she owned, but still too floral for the setting. Grandma with reading glasses hanging around her neck. The uncle wearing a dress shirt that looked like it had been ironed with a cold iron. And Sophie, sitting between Liam and Victoria, trying to look calm but failing miserably. Eleanor cleared her throat. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. She opened the folder in front of her with precise movements. As you know, coexistence between neighboring properties requires certain protocols. to ensure harmony and mutual respect. Grandma whispered much too loudly. She is talking about rules? I am talking about a code of conduct, Eleanor corrected. Cool. She picked up the stack of documents and began handing them out. I prepared copies for everyone. Sophie took the document and felt her stomach sink. The title, in Times New Roman size 14 bold, said, Code of Conduct for Harmonious Coexistence Between Adjacent Properties. It had 12 pages. The uncle flipped through it quickly. This has an index. It does, Eleanor answered without blinking. To make consultation easier. Sophie's father, always calm, asked, Mrs. Bennett, what exactly does this document propose? Eleanor turned the first page of her own copy. Section 1. Quiet hours. No noise above 60 decibels between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. This includes music, loud conversations, and construction equipment. Grandma raised her hand like a student. And what if the chicken sings at dawn? Eleanor paused, pen suspended in the air. Excuse me? Benedita, the chicken. She sings early, like 5 in the morning. Does that count as noise? Eleanor closed her eyes for 2 seconds, breathing in deeply. Farm animals are not allowed on urban residential properties. But Benedita is not from a farm, Grandma corrected, serious. She is family. Victoria bit her lip so hard, trying not to laugh, that she turned red. Eleanor continued, ignoring it. Section 2. Use of the shared gate. Access allowed only with written notice 24 hours in advance. Sophie's mother frowned. 24 hours? But what if I urgently need sugar? Plan ahead, Eleanor answered, sharp as ever. Her uncle, flipping through the document, stopped on a page and read aloud. Section 7. Investments and financial transactions. Any significant financial movement that may affect the value of adjacent properties must be communicated 60 days in advance. He looked at Eleanor, confused. What does that include exactly? Eleanor leaned forward and Sophie noticed something strange in her expression. Not just coldness, interest. It includes, for example, decisions regarding natural resource exploration, asset sales, corporate partnerships, a deliberate pause, anything involving newly acquired fortunes. Her uncle stiffened. You're talking about the oil. I'm talking about transparency between neighbors. Eleanor smiled, but not with her eyes. After all, rushed financial decisions can affect everyone around you. Sophie felt something in the air shift. Like electricity before a storm. Her father, sensing the trap, cut in. Bennett, with all respect, our finances are a private matter. Of course, Eleanor agreed softly, but when they involve corporate CEOs, she looked directly at Liam. Things can become complicated. Liam leaned forward, his voice calm but steady. Mrs. Bennett, I have no interest in the Martin family's finances beyond Sophie's well-being. How convenient. Eleanor smiled, but CEOs are trained to spot opportunities. And a newly discovered family fortune is a very significant opportunity. Her uncle went pale. Sophie felt her heart race. Eleanor. The name escaped before she could control herself. Liam isn't like that. Are you sure, dear? Eleanor tilted her head. After all, how long have you known him? 6 months? And suddenly your family discovers oil right after the engagement. How convenient. A heavy silence fell over the room. Victoria exploded. Mom, that is absurd. It's precaution. Eleanor didn't take her eyes off Sophie's uncle. I'm sure Mr. Martin understands the importance of protecting family assets from external influences. Her uncle looked at Liam, then at Eleanor, then back at Liam, and Sophie saw it happen, the seed of doubt being planted. Her father stood up. This meeting is over. His tone was calm but firm. Thank you for the document, Mrs. Bennett, but we won't sign anything that limits our freedom on our own property. Eleanor didn't look surprised. As you wish. But the document remains as an official proposal filed with the neighborhood association. The Martin family left in tense silence, but Eleanor grabbed her uncle's arm as he passed. Mr. Martin, may I speak with you for a moment, privately? About asset protection. Her uncle hesitated, looked at his family walking away, then back at Eleanor. Just a minute. At the door, Sophie turned back and saw it, Eleanor pulling her uncle to a discreet corner. Speaking quietly, serious, persuasive, and her uncle listening. Victoria pulled Sophie outside. This is not good. Sophie felt her stomach drop. What is your mother doing? Manipulating. Victoria whispered. She plants fear, offers the solution, and traps the person. It's what she always does. 20 minutes later, her uncle walked out, with a worried expression, distracted. He barely spoke on the way home. And that night, Sophie noticed he was avoiding Liam. In the days that followed, her uncle's behavior became strange. He showed up at random times, asked indirect questions about wealth management, looked at Liam with barely hidden suspicion. And then the first sabotage happened. Sophie walked into the living room of the new house and saw it. Her uncle's phone forgotten on the coffee table, recording, with the camera pointed directly at the spot where Liam usually sat. She picked up the phone, stopped the recording, and felt nausea rise. "He's investigating Liam?" Victoria appeared behind her. "I found this in the kitchen yesterday." She held up another phone. "Your uncle left it recording next to the refrigerator." Sophie looked at the two phones. "He's spying, and doing a terrible job." Victoria rolled her eyes. "I mean, who leaves a phone on top of a table recording? A 5-year-old spy?" But Sophie didn't laugh. "Victoria, why would he do this?" "Because my mother convinced him that Liam is a threat." Sophie felt tears burn at the corners of her eyes. "But Liam never did anything." "I know." Victoria held her shoulders. "But my mother is good at making people believe things that aren't true. She planted fear in your uncle. And now he's acting out of paranoia." Sophie leaned against the wall, her legs giving way. "What do I do?" "Confront him, but carefully." Victoria hesitated. "And Sophie? My mother is nervous. I've never seen her like this. This isn't good. Stay alert with your uncle, and with me. We'll figure out what she's planning." That night, Sophie was lying beside Liam, unable to sleep. He noticed. "What's going on?" Sophie hesitated, but she told him everything. The phones, the recording, her uncle's strange behavior. Liam stayed quiet for a few seconds. "He thinks I want their money. He's being manipulated by Eleanor." "I know." Liam pulled her closer. "But how do we prove it's not true?" Sophie had no answer, only fear growing in her chest. Fear that her family, the family that always protected her, was being turned against the man she loved. And the next day, when Sophie passed by Eleanor's house to pick up the mail, she heard voices coming from the garden. Low voices, secretive. She walked closer to the fence and listened. Her uncle's voice, "But what if you're right? What if he is interested in the money?" Eleanor's voice, "Then we need to act before it's too late." Sophie froze, her heart racing, and realized she was hearing a war being planned. Against her. Against Liam. And she didn't know how to stop it. She was still pressed against the fence, trying to process every word she'd heard, when her uncle shouted on the other side. "But how do I find out if he's after the money?" Sophie jumped so high she almost knocked over a potted plant beside her. She ran inside before anyone could see her. For the next 3 days, her uncle turned into a disastrous version of a spy from a bad movie. He showed up at odd times, asked questions that tried to be subtle but were painfully obvious, looked at Liam like he was analyzing a criminal suspect. And then the first disaster happened. Sophie was in the kitchen of the new house when she heard her mother's phone chime, then her father's, then her grandmother's, then her cousin's, all at the same time. Her mother picked up her phone, looked at the screen, and went pale. "What is it?" Sophie got closer. Her mother turned the phone to show her. It was a message in the family group chat, "Martin family, Sunday barbecue." And the message said, "Billionaire CEO manipulates naive family to control newly discovered oil fortune. Corporate hostile takeover techniques disguised as romance. Urgent investigation needed." Sophie felt her blood freeze. Her mother looked at her, confused. "Sophie, what is this message?" Before Sophie could respond, her father unlocked his phone and read aloud. "Who wrote this?" Her cousins replied almost at the same time in the chat. "Uncle Carlo." "Is the uncle okay?" Grandma, who was in the living room, shouted, "Carlos Martin, what are you doing?" Her uncle came running from the garage, sweating, holding his phone with pure panic on his face. "I sent it to the wrong group. I sent it to the wrong group." Silence. Grandma stood up slowly with the most serious expression Sophie had ever seen on her. "You sent what? To the wrong group?" Her uncle opened and closed his mouth 3 times before he managed to speak. I was trying to send it to an investigator." "An investigator?" Her mother almost screamed. "Carlo, what are you doing?" Her father crossed his arms, his voice dangerously calm. "Carlos, explain." Now, her uncle looked around, seeing the entire family staring at him with a mix of shock and disappointment, and then he tried to explain. "Look, it's just that Eleanor told me. She said CEOs are trained to take control of family fortunes, and I got scared. Grandma stepped forward. You believed Eleanor Bennett? She made sense, he said, gesturing desperately. She showed examples, real cases, and Liam showed up in Sophie's life right when we discovered the oil, and Liam proposed to her before you even discovered the oil. Sophie exploded, tears burning. He didn't even know, her uncle hesitated. But how can we be sure? Grandma walked up to him with steps so firm he backed away. Carlos Martin. She pointed a finger at his face. I raised you, I watched you grow up, and I never thought you'd be foolish enough to fall for manipulation from a rich woman with less heart than a freezer. Grandma. Be quiet. Grandma cut him off. Do you know what that boy has done for our Sophie? He gave up his company for her. He faced his entire family for her. And you're here believing he's after money? Her uncle turned bright red. I just wanted to protect the family. Protect? Grandma let out a humorless laugh. You're destroying it. You're turning the family against a man who loves our girl. Sophie couldn't take it anymore. She ran out of the kitchen, up the stairs, locked herself in her room, and broke down. She leaned against the door, hugged her knees, and cried. This is my fault. All of this. If I hadn't fallen in love with him, if I had stayed in my place. Soft knocks on the door. Sophie, Victoria's voice. Please open. Sophie opened the door with her face wet from crying. Victoria walked in, closed the door, and hugged her tightly. I heard everything. My uncle is an idiot. He was manipulated by your mother. I know. Victoria stepped back, holding Sophie's shoulders. And I tried to warn him, but he didn't want to listen. What do I do now? Victoria took a deep breath. You tell Liam, before he finds out another way. But it was already too late, because at that exact moment, Liam was in the garage organizing tools when he found a folder forgotten under the seat. A folder with a private investigator's logo. He opened it and saw photos of him, financial reports, transaction history, everything investigated, everything documented. And at the top of the first page in large letters, confidential investigation, Liam Bennett, possible marital fraud. Liam stared at the document for a full 10 seconds, then closed the folder and went to find the uncle. He found him in the living room, being scolded by the grandmother, while the rest of the family watched in uncomfortable silence. Liam walked in holding the folder. Mr. Martin, can we talk? The uncle turned, saw the folder, and turned pale. Liam, I can explain. Please. Liam placed the folder on the coffee table. Explain. The uncle looked around, desperate, searching for support. He found none, so he did the only thing his panicked mind could think of. He grabbed a sheet of paper and a pen, and started drawing charts. Look, it's simple. He scribbled a circle. Here's you. Here's the money. Another circle. Here's Sophie. A connecting line. And here is, wait. He stopped, staring at his own confused drawing. What was the point again? Liam just watched, expression unreadable. The uncle continued, sweating. Eleanor said CEOs do this. They marry heirs and then. He scribbled more lines. Take control of the assets through. He stopped again. Wait. I mixed everything up. The grandmother snatched the paper from his hand. Enough. She crushed the paper and threw it in the trash. You cannot even explain your own paranoia. The uncle looked at Liam, eyes shining with shame. Liam, I didn't mean to. I was just afraid of losing everything again. We spent our whole lives fighting to survive, and suddenly we have money. A lot of money. I panicked. Liam stayed silent for a few seconds. When he spoke, his voice was low, controlled, but full of pain. I love Sophie. He looked directly into the uncle's eyes. I have loved her since before I knew you had oil. I have loved her since she cleaned offices at 2 in the morning and measured the distance between forks. I gave up my company for her. I stood up to my mother for her. Pause. And you think I'm after her money? The uncle lowered his head, ashamed. I'm sorry. Sorry is not enough. Liam picked up the folder again. You investigated my life, you spread lies, you tried to sabotage me, and worse. He looked around. You hurt Sophie. That's when Sophie appeared at the door. With red eyes, wet face, hands shaking. She saw the folder, saw the uncle's shame, saw the pain on Liam's face, and she broke. This is my fault, she whispered. All of this is my fault. Liam went to her and pulled her into his arms. It's not. It is, Sophie sobbed. If I hadn't, none of this would be happening. Sophie, My family is turning against you. Your mother hates me. Everything is falling apart and I cannot fix it. She pulled away from him, went to the table, and began aligning the papers her uncle had spread around. Compulsively, one on top of the other, edges perfectly aligned, hands shaking so much she could barely hold them. Sophie, stop. Liam held her hands. I need to organize, she cried. It's the only thing I know how to do. Organize, align, fix broken things. But I cannot fix this. Liam pulled her back into his arms, holding her tightly. The grandmother approached and placed a hand on Sophie's shoulder. My granddaughter, look at me. Sophie lifted her wet face. This boy, the grandmother pointed at Liam, looks at you the way my late husband looked at me, and I know real love when I see it. She turned to the uncle. And you, she pointed an accusing finger, are going to apologize. Now. And then you will sit quietly in your corner until you learn not to be manipulated by a rich woman with no heart. The uncle stood, walked to Sophie, and with a shaken voice said, Sophie, I ruined everything. I was foolish. I believed lies because I was afraid. And I hurt you, and Liam, and I am truly sorry. Sophie looked at him, at the uncle who always protected her when she was a child, who always made her laugh, who was now there, destroyed by his own paranoia. You hurt me, she said, her voice breaking. But I understand. Fear makes us do foolish things. The uncle hugged her, crying, and for a few seconds it seemed like maybe, just maybe, things could be fixed, until the doorbell rang. Carol, Eleanor's housekeeper, was at the door, with an envelope, a message from Mrs. Bennett. She handed the envelope to Sophie. She asked me to deliver it in person. Sophie opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, a simple card, in perfect cursive. Since Plan A failed, I will implement Plan B. See you at the wedding. If there is still going to be one, EB. Sophie showed the card to Liam. He read it, and closed his eyes. She is not going to give up. What do we do? Liam held her hand. We get married, and we show her that nothing she does will separate us. Sophie looked at him, at the determined eyes, at the love she saw there. And for the first time in days, she felt something besides fear. She felt hope. But deep inside, one question kept pounding. What exactly was Eleanor's Plan B? And she was sure she would find out, in the worst way possible. 2 days later, at 10:43 in the morning, Eleanor Bennett showed up at the door of the Martins' mansion. Without warning, without calling, without asking permission. And when Sophie's mother opened the door, Eleanor smiled that smile that never reached her eyes and said, with a voice sharp as glass, I came to talk to Sophie. Sophie's mother froze for 2 seconds before shouting into the house, Sophie, you have a visitor. Sophie was in her room measuring the distance between the frames on the wall because the new house was still being decorated and nothing was in the right place when she heard it. She went downstairs expecting Victoria or Liam or even her uncle wanting to apologize again. She was not expecting Eleanor Bennett standing in the living room like a cold marble statue. Sophie stopped on the last step, her hand gripping the railing. Mrs. Bennett. Sophie. Eleanor smiled. False. Calculated. May we talk? In private? The grandmother who was in the kitchen appeared with a cup of coffee and a suspicious look. Talk about what? Adult matters, Eleanor answered, icy. The grandmother was about to respond, but Sophie stepped in. Fine, let's go to the garden. She did not want a scene, not in front of the family. They walked through the back, moving in silence through the newly tended garden, where the grass was still too green, where everything still smelled new and unfinished. Eleanor stopped near the rose bushes, turning to Sophie with an expression that mixed false pity and real superiority. Sophie, dear, I came here as a courtesy, woman to woman. Sophie crossed her arms, the tape measure still hanging around her neck. She had forgotten to take it off. Courtesy. Yes. Eleanor took a step closer. Because I believe you deserve to hear the truth before making a mistake you cannot undo. What truth? Eleanor sighed, as if she were about to reveal a painful but necessary secret. You do not belong in the Bennett world. Silence. Sophie felt something tighten in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. I know I was not born with money, if that is what you mean. It is not only about money, dear. Eleanor tilted her head, analyzing Sophie like someone studying a broken object. It is about essence. You may have wealth now, you may buy expensive clothes, you may live in a mansion, but you will never have what people like us have. And what is that? Eleanor smiled. Cruel. Class, education, refinement. She paused. Do you think I do not notice? The way you measure the distance between silverware as if that were normal behavior? The way your family invades other people's property with no sense of boundaries? The chicken clucking in the yard? Eleanor let out a humorless laugh. Money does not buy belonging, Sophie, and you will never belong. Sophie felt her nails dig into her palms. I do not need to belong to your world. But you need to belong in Liam's world. Eleanor took another step. And that is my world. It always has been. It always will be. And you? You are an intruder, an opportunist, someone who showed up at the right moment with the right story and charmed my son when he was vulnerable. I did not charm anyone. No? Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Then explain to me, how does a cleaning girl with no formal education manage to win over a billionaire CEO? Oh yes, you saved the company. How convenient. How calculated. Sophie was trembling now, but not from fear, from anger. I did not calculate anything. I just fixed a mistake no one else saw. Yes, or a mistake you created yourself, Eleanor smiled. So you could fix it and impress everyone. It is an old trick, dear. Create a problem, offer the solution, become the heroine. Sophie felt the tears burning, but she was not going to cry. Not in front of her. I would never do that. Of course not, Eleanor said with poisonous sarcasm. And your family discovering oil right after the engagement was also pure coincidence, was it not? It was. And you expect me to believe that? Eleanor crossed her arms. Sophie, I did not get where I am by being naive. I know how to recognize a schemer when I see one. And you, this whole performance of a shy, awkward girl is just that, a performance. And that was it. That was what broke the last thread of control Sophie had. Performance! Sophie exploded, her voice louder than she ever imagined she could produce. You think I am performing? Eleanor blinked, surprised. Sophie? No. Sophie took a step forward, tears finally falling, but her voice steady. You will listen to me now, because I spent months swallowing your humiliations, your looks of disdain, your venom disguised as politeness. I never. You always did, Sophie pointed, her hand shaking. Since the first dinner, you judged me. You investigated me like I was a criminal. You manipulated my uncle. You installed 3 locks so you did not have to see my face. And now you come here in my house to tell me that I am the one without class. Eleanor stayed silent, her posture rigid. Sophie continued, the words rushing out like a flood. I measured silverware my whole life because it is the only way I can handle anxiety. My family invades because they are warm and do not know what it is like to live with a wall instead of a heart. And Benedita? Sophie almost laughed from anger. Benedita is a chicken, Eleanor. A chicken that makes my grandmother happy. And if that is a problem for you, the problem is not mine. That was when Liam appeared. He had heard the shouting from far away and came running. He stopped beside Sophie, his voice low but firm. Mother, leave. Eleanor turned to him, trying to regain control. Liam, I was just trying to make the girl see reality. Reality? Liam took a step forward. The reality is that you spent months trying to destroy the woman I love. You humiliated her, you manipulated her family, and now you come here for what? To finish the job. I am trying to protect you. I do not need protection. Liam shouted, and for the first time Eleanor Bennett saw her son completely lose his patience with her. I need you to stop. Stop attacking her. Stop interfering. Stop trying to control my life. Eleanor turned pale. That was when Grandma appeared, walking slowly but with a presence that filled the entire garden. She stopped beside Sophie, crossed her arms, and said with surgical calm, Enough. My granddaughter speaks now. And you, she pointed at Eleanor, you are going to listen, because until now you only talked. And honestly, I am tired of hearing it. Eleanor tried to keep her composure. Mrs. Marta, this has nothing to do. Yes, it does. Grandma cut her off. Because this girl you're attacking? She is my granddaughter. She is my blood, and I will not stand here watching you tear her down. Eleanor opened her mouth to reply when something completely unexpected happened. Benedita, the chicken, escaped from the improvised coop in the back of the garden and came running, clucking loudly, crossing the garden like a feathered missile, passing between Eleanor and Sophie like an improvised referee of the confrontation. The uncle appeared running after her, out of breath. Benedita, come back here. The tense moment instantly turned into farce. Victoria, who had arrived running after hearing the shouting, covered her mouth to avoid laughing. Eleanor looked at the chicken, then at the uncle chasing her, then at the whole family gathered in the garden watching, and she lost the last thread of control. This, she pointed at Benedetta being caught by the uncle. This is exactly what I am talking about. You are chaos. You have no sense of decorum, Grandma shrugged, and you have no sense of humanity, so I guess we are tied. Sophie, in the middle of everything, felt something strange. It was no longer anger. It was clarity. She wiped her tears, straightened her shoulders, and looked directly at Eleanor. Mrs. Bennett, I spent months trying to prove I'm good enough for your world, trying to fit in, trying not to embarrass Liam. Pause. But I realized something today. I do not need to prove anything. Not to you. Not to anyone. Because I am good enough. And if you cannot see that, the problem is yours, not mine. Eleanor was speechless. For the first time in decades, Eleanor Bennett had no answer. Victoria stepped closer to her mother, her voice low but firm. Mother, you went too far. Even for you. Eleanor looked at her daughter. Bennett Liam, Bennett Sophie, and she saw that she had lost. Completely. But Eleanor Bennett did not accept defeat easily. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and before leaving, whispered just low enough for only Sophie, Liam, and Victoria to hear. Enjoy this moment of victory, because at the wedding, I'm going to reveal something that will make you question everything about him. She looked directly at Liam. A secret he's hiding, and when you find out, you'll thank me for trying to protect you. Sophie froze. Liam turned pale. Victoria whispered, What secret? But Eleanor was already walking away, crossing the yard with stiff steps, getting into the car, and leaving without looking back. The family stood in silence, until Grandma broke the tension. Does anyone want coffee? Because after that, I need industrial-strength caffeine. Everyone went inside, except Sophie. She stayed in the yard, staring at the leaves on the ground, scattered, chaotic. She crouched to organize them, but stopped, because she realized she didn't need to organize them. She could leave them messy, and the world wouldn't end, but she organized them anyway, because it was part of who she was, and she had just learned being who she was enough. Liam walked over and sat on the ground beside her. You were incredible. Sophie let out a shaky laugh. I yelled. I lost control. I became everything I promised I'd never be. You defended yourself. Liam took her hand. Finally, Sophie looked at him. What secret was she talking about? Liam hesitated, and Sophie saw it. There was something he hadn't told her. Liam? He took a deep breath. I'll tell you, I promise. But not now. Not like this. Not after everything that just happened. Sophie felt fear return. Is it bad? It's complicated. Complicated how? Liam looked at her, eyes full of fear of losing her. Complicated enough for her to use it against me. And Sophie realized the war wasn't over. Eleanor had lost the battle, but she had saved ammunition for the war, and the wedding would be the final battleground. 3 a.m, Sophie lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, holding her measuring tape like a child holds a security blanket. And for the first time in months, she seriously thought about giving up on everything. She grabbed her phone, the blue light shining on her tear-streaked face, opened her messages, scrolled to Liam's name, and started typing. Liam, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch you suffer because of me. Your mother is right. I don't belong. She erased everything, took a deep breath, tried again. I think we need to talk about ending things, about... She erased it again. Her hands shook so much she could barely hold the phone. I love you, but love isn't enough when all I bring to your life is chaos. You deserve. She threw the phone aside before she hit send. She pressed her head into the pillow and cried, because part of her wanted to send it, wanted to free Liam from the burden of being with her, from the burden of her family, from the burden of Eleanor, from the burden of everything. But the other part? The other part couldn't imagine life without him, and that hurt more than anything. The next morning, Sophie walked into the kitchen with deep circles under her eyes, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Grandma was making coffee when she saw her. She stopped what she was doing and simply looked, the way grandmothers look when they know. You didn't sleep. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. Sophie tried to smile. I slept. Kind of. Not true. Grandma placed a cup in front of her. And you're thinking about doing something foolish. Sophie froze. Don't deny it. I saw it. I saw you looking at your phone yesterday like someone writing a goodbye letter. Grandma sat in front of her. You're thinking about ending things with him. Sophie felt tears return. I'm tired, Grandma. Tired of being a problem. Tired of dragging him into chaos. Eleanor is right. I don't belong in that world. And who said you need to belong? But I'm ruining his life. You're saving his life. Grandma hit the table. That boy was empty inside when he met you, living for the company, for his mother, for everyone except himself. And you woke him up. Sophie hid her face in her hands. But his family hates me. His mother hates you. That's different. And she hates you because you took away the control she had over him. Grandma held Sophie's hands firmly. My granddaughter, I didn't raise you to quit at the first sign of trouble. It's not the first sign of trouble. It's the 10th, the 20th. Grandma was about to answer when Sophie's father appeared in the kitchen doorway. Family meeting. Now. Living room. Sophie looked at him surprised, because his tone was serious, and her father was never serious. 10 minutes later, the entire Martin family was gathered in the living room. Her father in the main armchair, her mother beside him, Grandma on the sofa, her uncle leaning against the wall, her cousins on the floor, and Sophie in the middle, feeling like she was on trial. Her father took a deep breath. Sophie, we know you're hurting. We see it, and we need to talk. Seriously, no jokes, no avoiding it. Her uncle muttered, Is this like an intervention? Be quiet, Carlo. Grandma cut in. Her father continued, Sweetheart, are you thinking about ending things with Liam? Sophie hesitated, then nodded, very softly. Her mother made a sound like she'd been hit. Her father leaned forward. Why? Because I only caused trouble. Sophie exploded. Look at everything that happened. Eleanor hates me. My uncle got manipulated. The whole family turned against him, and I can't fix it. You don't need to fix it. Her father said firm. True love isn't about earning anything, Sophie. It's about choosing. Every day. And he chooses you. Every single day. Sophie sobbed. Her mother stood up, walked to her, and hugged her tight. My daughter, you always thought you had to fit into little boxes, that you had to be perfect. But you know what? You're too straightforward to fit inside a crooked box. And that's beautiful. Grandma stood up too, adjusting her glasses with determination. All right, enough of everyone talking. I'm giving a motivational speech now, because I raised this girl and I know what to say. She stood in the middle of the room, took a wrinkled paper from her pocket, clearly prepared beforehand, and cleared her throat. Sophie Martin, you are strong, you are capable, you are moo, ooh. A loud, deep sound, impossible to ignore. Coming from the backyard, everyone turned at the same time. Through the glass door, they saw a cow, brown and white, with a little flower tied around her neck like decoration, mooing loudly as if commenting on the family drama. Absolute silence. Sophie blinked 3 times. That's a cow? Her uncle scratched his head, embarrassed. It's kind of a surprise? Surprise? Grandma turned to him. You bought a cow? Her uncle defended himself. For fresh milk? Organic, like an urban farm. Her mother covered her face with her hands. Carlo, we live in Manhattan. So what? Rich people have horses. Why can't we have a cow? The cow mooed again as if agreeing. Sophie looked at the cow, at her arguing family, at the absolute chaos, and started laughing. Not polite laughter. Hysterical laughter. She laughed so hard she had to sit on the floor, holding her stomach, tears running, but from laughing this time. We have a cow. She could barely speak. We have a cow in Manhattan. Grandma tried to stay serious. Sophie, I was giving a motivational speech. I know, Sophie laughed harder. And it got interrupted by a cow. Even her father started laughing. Then her mother, then her uncle, then her cousins. Even Grandma finally started laughing, reluctantly. And that's when Sophie realized something important. This was her family. Chaotic, loud, buying cows in Manhattan, but they were hers. And Liam had chosen this, chosen her, knowing all of it. On the other side of the fence, Eleanor stood at her bedroom window, saw the cow, closed her eyes, and called the real estate agency to ask if it was possible to sue neighbors for animal noise pollution. Sophie was still laughing when they heard knocking on the door. Victoria walked in without waiting for an answer, saw the cow through the glass, and stopped. You bought a cow? Long story. Sophie wiped her tears. Victoria sat beside her on the floor. I came because I know my mother makes everything harder, and I know you're probably thinking about giving up. Sophie stayed quiet. But I need you to know this. You are not alone. I'm here. Your family is here. And Liam? Victoria held her hand. Liam chooses you. Every day. Even with the cow. Even with the chicken. Even with everything. Sophie let out a watery laugh. How did you know I was thinking about giving up? Because I know you. And I know my mother. And I know the damage she causes. Victoria squeezed her hand. But you're stronger than she is. You just forgot for a while. Her uncle, trying to help, but of course being disastrous, came closer. Sophie, you know what I learned? He crouched in front of her. I learned we don't choose perfect family. We choose family that fights. And Liam? He's fighting for you. Like he stands up to his mother, that scary woman. If that's not love, I don't know what is. He tried to make a dramatic gesture but hit his elbow on the table. Oh! He rubbed it. But the point still stands. Sophie laughed again, and then she heard it. Small stones hitting her bedroom window on the second floor. She stood up, confused, and went to the window. Opened it, and there was Liam. In the yard, at midnight, holding a giant tape measure, one of those construction ones, about 15 feet long. He shouted, "Sophie Martin." She leaned out the window. "Liam, what are you doing?" "I heard," he shouted back. "Victoria told me you're thinking about ending things, Liam, and I won't let that happen." He lifted the measuring tape. "You like measuring distance, right? Then measure. Measure the distance between us." He stretched the tape as far as it would go. "Do you know how much it is? 0. It has always been 0, because no matter what happens, I will always choose to stay close to you." Sophie was crying again, but smiling. "You are crazy." "I know," he shouted, laughing. "I am crazy about you, and I don't care if my mother hates me. I don't care if your family has a cow." He pointed at the cow, watching everything curiously. "In fact, the cow is beautiful." The cow mooed as if thanking him for the compliment. "I will not give up on you, Sophie," Liam continued, "so stop trying to make me give up, because it will not work." Sophie ran down the stairs, crossed the yard, and threw herself into his arms. "You are an idiot," she cried on his shoulder. "I know." He held her tightly. "But I'm your idiot." They stayed like that for a few minutes, hugging, in the middle of the garden, with the cow watching. Until Sophie stepped back, wiping her face. "Liam, the secret, what your mother is going to reveal at the wedding." He took a deep breath. "I'll tell you, I promise. But not today. Not like this. On the wedding day, before the ceremony, you will know everything." "Is it bad?" "It's complicated." He held her face in his hands. "But I promise it doesn't change anything between us, unless you decide it does." Sophie looked into his eyes, and she saw fear, real fear of losing her. "Okay. I trust you." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you." They walked back inside hand in hand, and when they entered, the whole family was at the window watching. The grandmother wiped her eyes. "This boy is good," the uncle nodded, "and he likes the cow. That earns points." The cow mooed again, and Sophie, for the first time in days, felt that maybe, just maybe, everything would turn out fine. But deep down, one question was still pounding. What secret was Liam hiding? And would it be strong enough to destroy everything? She would find out. On the wedding day. And she was terrified. 6 in the morning. Wedding day. Sophie woke up staring at the ceiling, holding the measuring tape against her chest, and thought, "Today I will find out the secret, and either we get married or everything falls apart." She didn't know which of the two scared her more. The Martin house had been in controlled chaos since 5:30 in the morning. Sophie's mother ran from one side to the other with hair clips in her mouth. The cousins were in the bathroom fighting for mirror space. The grandmother was in the kitchen making coffee strong enough to wake the dead. And the uncle? The uncle was in the yard trying to put a giant bow on the cow. "Benedetta 2.0 needs to look presentable," he shouted when her mother asked what he was doing. The cow mooed, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Sophie sat on the bed, still in pajamas, staring at the wedding dress hanging in the closet. White. Simple, elegant, and completely terrifying. Knocks on the door. "Sophie," Victoria's voice, "can I come in?" "Come in." Victoria walked in holding a makeup case the size of a small suitcase and an expression of pure determination. "It's time to turn you into a bride." Sophie looked at her with wide eyes. "Victoria, I don't know if I can do this." "Do what? Marry the man who loves you? Or survive the most chaotic day of your life?" "Both." Victoria sat beside her on the bed. "Look at me." She held Sophie's shoulders. You are going to get married. You are going to survive. And at the end of the day, you will be married to Liam, and nothing else will matter. Sophie took a deep breath. And the secret? Whatever secret he has, you two will deal with it. Together. Victoria smiled. Now get up, because if we don't start getting you ready now, you're going to get married in pajamas. 1 hour later, Sophie was sitting in front of the mirror while Victoria finished her makeup. Her mother walked in holding the veil with reverent care. My daughter? Her eyes were already red. You look beautiful. Sophie looked at the mirror and barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly. Her hair was in an elegant bun, the makeup soft but striking. She looked like a bride. The grandmother appeared at the door, stopped and covered her mouth. My goodness, you look just like your mother on her wedding day. Her mother started crying for real now. Sophie stood up, adjusting the dress, when she heard knocks on the window. She opened it. Liam was standing outside, wearing a flawless dark gray suit, holding small pebbles. I know I can't see the bride, he shouted, but I need to talk to you, before the ceremony. Sophie looked at Victoria, who nodded like, go. 5 minutes, Sophie shouted back. She ran downstairs as fast as she could in heels, went out the back door, and found Liam waiting near the rose bushes. He turned the moment he heard her approaching, and froze. Wow, Sophie blushed. You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony. It's bad luck. I know, but he took a deep breath. I need to tell you, now, before my mother tells you first and twists everything. Sophie felt her stomach tighten. The secret. The secret. They sat on the stone bench in the garden. Liam held her hands. Before I met you, he began, his voice low. My mother had arranged a marriage for me. Sophie felt her heart jump. Marriage? With an heiress, daughter of a tech magnate. It was a corporate deal, a merger of companies through marriage. He looked down. And I agreed. Silence. Sophie tried to process it. You were going to get married for business? Yes. Liam finally looked at her, his eyes full of shame. Because it was what I always did. Obey, do what was expected. I did not even question it. I just accepted it, like an automaton. And what happened? I met you. He squeezed her hands. I met you and realized I was empty inside, that I had never felt anything real. And I canceled everything. I lost contracts, I lost partnerships. My mother was furious, but I did not regret it. Not for a second. Sophie felt tears burn. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because I was ashamed. His voice cracked. Ashamed of being so hollow, of almost selling myself, and I was afraid you would see me differently. Sophie wiped her tears, taking a deep breath. Liam, look at me. He looked. You were not hollow. You just had not found your path yet. She touched his face. And you chose me. You canceled everything. You lost business. You faced your mother. For me, how could I judge you for that? Liam pulled her into a hug so strong it almost lifted her off the ground. I love you. I love you too. Sophie stepped back, smiling through her tears. Now go, before we break the tradition even more. He kissed her forehead and left. Sophie went back inside, wiping her face. Victoria was waiting with a tissue. All good? All good. Sophie smiled. Now let's get married. 3 hours later, the Bennett mansion garden was transformed. Perfectly lined white chairs. Sophie had measured them herself. Flowers hanging from the trees. An altar decorated with white fabric and roses. And in the back, strategically positioned behind a decorative fence, the cow, with a giant pink bow around her neck, mooing softly as if singing. Guests were arriving. A lead on one side, the Martin family on the other. Eleanor sat in the front row, in an impeccable beige dress, rigid posture, expression of someone about to witness a funeral. The music started. Victoria walked in first as maid of honor, smiling brightly. Then the cousins as bridesmaids. And then Sophie appeared, her arm linked with her father's. The entire garden went silent. She walked slowly, eyes fixed on Liam, who was at the altar, with the expression of a man watching a miracle happen. When she passed by Eleanor's row, she heard the cold voice whisper loud enough for her to hear. You know he was engaged before, right? A business marriage. He agreed to it. Do you really think with you it is any different? Sophie stopped, turned to Eleanor, and with a calm but firm voice loud enough for half the row, I already know. He told me, and I choose him anyway, because real love does not judge the past, it forgives and builds the future. Eleanor was speechless. For the second time in a week, Sophie kept walking, and when she reached the altar, Liam whispered, "You are incredible." "I know." She smiled. The officiant began the ceremony. Everything was going perfectly, until the uncle, trying to adjust the camera for a better angle, bumped into the side table. The giant flower arrangement tipped over, in slow motion, falling, splash, right into the decorative fountain. Water splashed over everyone in the front row. Eleanor was soaked. The uncle froze, still holding the camera. Oops. Absolute silence for 3 seconds. Then the grandmother started laughing, loudly, uncontrollably. And then everyone on the Martin side started laughing too. Even Sophie and Liam laughed. Eleanor stood up, dripping, and walked inside without saying a word. Victoria whispered to Sophie, "Best moment of the day." The officiant, trying to bring back the solemn tone, continued, "Well, shall we proceed with the vows?" Liam held Sophie's hands. "Sophie Martin, when I met you, you were measuring the distance between forks at 2 in the morning, and I thought, this woman is out of her mind." Laughter. "But then I saw you were not being strange. You were being you. Authentic, real, and you taught me that it is okay to be who you are, even if that means carrying a tape measure in your bag all the time." Sophie laughed while crying. Liam continued, "You woke me up, you saved me, and today I promise to spend the rest of my life loving you. Chaos, order, and everything in between." Sophie wiped her tears, took a deep breath. "Liam Bennett, I spent my entire life trying to fit into boxes, trying to be perfect, trying not to bother anyone." She looked at the Martin family. "But my family taught me that sometimes you do not fit in a box, and that is fine." She looked back at Liam. "And you taught me that I do not need to fit, I just need to be me, and you love me for that, so I promise to always be myself, even when it means reorganizing your entire life without warning." Liam laughed. "I am counting on that." The officiant smiled. "Liam Bennett, do you take Sophie Martin as your wife?" "I do." "Sophie Martin, do you take Liam Bennett as your husband?" Sophie looked at him, at the man who had given up his company for her, who had stood up to his mother, who had shown up with a giant measuring tape. "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce Moo, the cow," at the exact moment, as if giving its official blessing. Everyone burst into laughter. The officiant, laughing too, continued, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Liam pulled Sophie into a kiss, and the entire garden applauded. The cow mooed again. Benedetta clucked from somewhere, and Sophie realized, right there in the middle of the most perfect chaos of her life, she belonged. Not to Eleanor's world, not only to the Martin world, but to her world. With Liam, with family, with a giant measuring tape and everything. During the party, Grandma managed to get the microphone. "I want to make a toast," she shouted. Everyone turned. "My granddaughter." Grandma wiped her eyes. "My granddaughter has always been special, always been different, and today she married a man who loves her exactly because of that. So I raise a toast." She lifted her glass, to chaos, to order, and to the love that accepts both. "Cheers!" Everyone shouted. Benedetta clucked loudly, as if agreeing. Sophie and Liam danced their first dance, and when the music ended, he whispered, "Ready to spend the rest of your life with me?" Sophie looked around, at the chaotic family, at the cow with a bow, at the chicken running loose, at Victoria laughing, at Eleanor, absent but defeated, more than ready. And when they kissed again, Sophie realized that finally, she was home. So, what did you think of this whole journey? From the cleaning lady who saved 500 million at 2 in the morning, to the bride who got married in the most beautiful chaos New York has ever seen. Sophie and Liam proved that true love does not try to change who you are. It measures, adjusts, and embraces every unusual detail, every measuring tape, every decorated chicken, every cow with a bow. What was your favorite moment in this episode? The epic showdown, Sophie versus Eleanor? The cow mooing in the middle of the ceremony? Liam with the giant measuring tape? Grandma scolding the uncle? Or the perfect, chaotic wedding? Leave your opinion in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this episode? And if you fell in love with this story as much as I did, the saga continues. Because now Sophie and Liam will face the next chapter. The honeymoon, married life, and Eleanor still needing to learn how to accept things. Which promises a lot of extra chaos. Want more stories about Sophie, Liam, and the Martin family? Leave it in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss any chapter. See you in the next story. And remember, you do not need to fit into the world. The right world will make space for you. Measuring tape, compass, cow with a bow and all.